Today we will be factoring trinomials, and we will have that a term out in front of the x squared term. So again, the form looks like this. It's that ax squared plus or minus bx. And our c term on all of the problems we see today is going to be a minus. And so what we'll end up having to remember is looking at that minus sign in front of the c term, what that tells us is that our outside terms and inner terms, so the outer and inner, we're going to end up subtracting those numbers. And when we subtract them, that's when we're going to get the b term, whatever that is. And so it could be a positive b term or it could be a negative b term, whatever the b term is. So again, you'll see the a term. Sometimes it'll be prime, like this one here, and sometimes it'll be a composite, like this one over here. So we'll start with factoring by drawing our two sets of parentheses, and whenever we've got the prime number, for instance right here, this 5 is prime, what that tells us is that the only options we have are going to end up being 5x and x. So that's what I'm going to start with, so I know that. Now again, I'm looking at this sign right here, and that tells me that my outside terms and inner terms are going to end up subtracting. Now they subtract because they're opposite in sign, and when they subtract, they make a 7. So again, I'm going to take that 6, and I'm going to break it down to different ways to multiply two numbers to make 6, like 2 and 3, 3 and 2, 6 and 1, 1 and 6. And I'm going to try those different numbers in these two last spots inside the two binomials. So we go ahead and try the first one here, 2 and 3. And so when I do this, I'm checking those outside terms. They make 15x. My inside terms make 2x, and when I subtract, I get 13. That's too big. And so we know this one is wrong, so we'll cross it off so we don't end up trying it again. Then we can erase what we tried there and try another different option. So we'll try the next one right next to it, and we'll start with the 3 here and the 2 on the right-hand side. And so when we take a look at the inside terms, we get 3x. The outside terms make 10x. And when we go ahead and subtract those, we end up with that 7x. And that does match what we want. Now we want a positive 7, so what that means is we needed more positives than negatives. So the 10 needs to be positive, so the plus sign goes with the 2. The minus sign with the 3. So again, as we're doing the problem, we're checking our work as we go. So we have 5x minus 3 multiplied by an x plus 2. Let's take a look at the next one here. Again, we have a term, and it's prime. So when we have the prime number, that's what we're going to end up starting with. So we're going to draw the two sets of parentheses, put that 3x and x in place of the first terms in each of those binomials. Then we're going to take a look at that last term. Now it's going to be negative. All the problems today are going to be negative. So that tells us the outer and inner terms are going to end up subtracting. Now when I subtract those, I'm going to end up with the middle term, that b term, which is negative 14. And so I'm going to try different numbers that make 24. And as I think of them, I'm going to think of maybe breaking this 24 down to maybe like a 4 and a 6 to start with. And then I should try the 6 and the 4, so I cover both of those. And I also have that 3 and 8, and 8 and 3. And then I've also got 2 and 12, 12 and 2, 1 and 24, and 24 and 1. So I've got to try all these different options, and hopefully one of them ends up working. So let's start with that first one, 4 and 6. And so I check the outside terms and the inner terms. So the inner terms are 4x. The outside terms make an 18x. And when I subtract those two numbers, I get 14x. And that matches what I have, so I got it on the first try. Now I want a negative 14, so that means that we need more negatives than positives. So the 4x is my plus. 3 times negative 6 gives me my negative 18, and there's the answer. So I got a 3x plus 4, and we'll end up having an x minus 6. Well, let's take a look at the next one here. This time it's a little bit different in that our prime number is not the first term. Our prime number is right here. And so on most of the problems you see today, all but one, we're going to end up with a prime number somewhere in the problem. And where we want the prime number is either the first term or the last term. It doesn't matter what the middle term is. Because those two numbers, we have the values that we multiply to make them. For instance, the first terms multiply to make the 12x squared. The last terms multiply to make the negative 5. So we're going to start with the prime numbers, 5 and 1. Now we're going to think of numbers that make that 12 when we multiply them. So when I do this, I'm going to think of maybe like maybe a 3 and a 4, 4 and a 3. I've also got the 2 and 6, 6 and 2, and then I also have the 12 and 1, 1 and 12. So all these different options here, and I just try them. So I've got the 3 in the x, the 4 in the x, and I'm checking the outside terms and the inside terms. Well, in this one here, I get 20x, and the outer terms make 3x, and those do subtract to make 17x, so it works. And so now we just need to make sure we can get a positive 17, so that means we need a positive 20 and a negative 3. So 3 is negative, so put the minus sign with the 1, and the 20 is positive, so put the plus sign with the 5. So we know it's right because we've already checked our work. So we can write that answer in our answer box, 3x plus 5, and a 4x minus 1. Well, let's take a look at the next problem here. This one, we have the prime number back at the first term. So that's what we're going to end up starting with. So when we go ahead and write down our two parentheses, we can already start by putting 5x and x inside the first terms. Now we need numbers that multiply to make 18. Again, when we're doing this, we're looking at that last digit sign, and as we've seen on the others, it's minus. So that tells us our outer terms and inner terms are subtracting, and we're trying to get a 9x when we do so. And so I'll just think of the numbers that make that 18. We've got 6 and 3, 3 and 6. And we've also got the 2 and 9, 9 and 2. We've got the 1 and 18, 18 and 1. And we just list all those different numbers and then try them. And hopefully we'll get it on one of the first two terms. And so we go ahead and check the first ones here. And I see right away this is going to be too big. See, 30x, 5 and 6 make 30, where 3 and x only make 3. So I was wrong on the first one. So I know those don't subtract to make 9. That's going to subtract to make 27. So I'm going to erase that right away. Then move on to the next option here, and I'll cross off that as I go. And let's go ahead and put in that 6 here and the 3 here. Hopefully this one works. So 5 and 3 make 15, so I'm checking the outside there. Inside makes 6, and when I do subtract those, I end up with 9. Now I want a positive 9, so that means I need more positives than negatives. So it's a negative 6 here, and a positive 15. So 3 and 5 need to both be positive. So there's our answer. 5x minus 6 multiplied by a x plus 3. Well, taking a look at the next one here, we have the prime number back at the last term here. So that's the part we're going to start with. So let's go ahead and draw our two parentheses. And we'll start with 7 and 1. I know it's going to be 7 and 1. I just don't know what numbers multiply to make the 6x squared and where the signs should end up being. One needs to be minus, one needs to be positive, so that the outer and inner subtract to make 11. And so I think I need to break the 6 down. So I'm going to break that down to probably 3 and 2. And if that doesn't work, I should try the 2 and the 3, the 1 and the 6, the 6 and the 1. And so let's try this. 3 here, 3x, and then 2x. And so we're just checking those outside and inside terms. So this makes 14x, and this makes 3x. And yes, those will subtract to make 11x. So to make a positive 11x, which is what I want, I need to have more positives than I have negatives. So I put the plus sign with the 7, the minus sign with the 1. And that'll end up working out. And so that's what goes inside our answer box. 3x plus 7 multiplied by the 2x minus 1. Well, looking at the last problem here, this one's a little bit more difficult because we don't have that prime number. And on number 16 on tonight's homework, you're going to see the same instance where we don't have that prime number, so we're not going to be able to start off with something right away. So we're going to look at this, negative 9. Again, Whenever that's negative, our outer and inner are subtracting to end up making 16. Now, when I think about that, they need to subtract to make 16. Well, I think I'm going to end up having to break down this 4n. So let's try this to start off with. And this might be wrong. And if it is, then I'll end up having to go with the 4n and the 1n. But I think it's going to be 2n and 2n. So I'm going to go ahead and try some different numbers that make the 9. Well, I think it's going to end up starting with maybe like a 9 and a 1. If that doesn't work, we'll try the 3 and the 3. Now, I don't need to try 1 and 9 because we have the same coefficient in front of the variable. So I'm going to try a 9 and a 1. And again, if it doesn't work, I've got other options. I could always go back to the 4n and 1n if this doesn't work. So I'm checking the outside terms make 2n. Inside make 18n, and yes, I do get those to subtract to make 16n, so it works. And there's only one way that these are going to end up working, not two. So we go ahead and figure out what our signs are going to be. Remember, we needed a positive 16, so we needed more positives than negatives. So plus sign with the 9, minus sign with the 1 to make that a negative 2n. So there's our answer, 2n plus 9 multiplied by a 2n minus 1. So those are some of the problems that you'll end up seeing, similar problems to tonight's homework. Good luck.